What is up, everyone? I'm Rusty, your local laboratory maniac, and this is Labman EDH. Today, I continue my series to find the most unique commander decks in each color identity. For this video, it's mono green. We're going to have some crazy green decks in this video. You got Burn, you got Extra Turns, you got Eggs, you got Grandeur. You name it, we can do it in green. You know the drill. I'll briefly go over 10 unique EDH deck ideas and comment down below which one you find the most interesting. If someone shows interest in a particular deck, I'll make it into its own kind of video, or I'll add it to one of my long form video compilations. And I'll include deck lists, I'll include different strategies you can go. So if you are interested, comment down below. Now, let's not waste any more time and jump into the decks. This first deck I call Green Eggs and Ham. It's an eggs based strategy with 6 as the commander. He's a 3 mana green legendary creature tree folk. Has reach. When it attacks, mill 3 cards, and then you may put a land card from among them into your hand. As long as it's your turn, non land permanent cards in your graveyard have retrace. Retrace means you can cast a permanent card from your graveyard by paying its cost plus discarding a land from your hand, and he's a 2/4. So eggs is essentially a strategy that you have these small, low to the ground artifacts that you sacrifice to get some kind of value. And if they ETB or get sent to the graveyard, they have some kind of effect or the removal. It's a combo based deck. It doesn't always go infinite, but it's just so much synergy, so many plays. You really have to be on point to play a deck like this. I actually got this idea from someone on Reddit named DJus Books. I love the idea of this. And what I really like about Retrace is it does not come in with a finality counter on it. It doesn't go to exile when it leaves the battlefield like most things do nowadays. It's you just get to recast it as long as you have a land in your hand. 6 is a tree folk from Innistrad who bonded with Ren the Planeswalker. When she bonds with a tree, she names it for the number of tree that it is in the succession of bonding. For example, 6 is obviously number 6. She had 7. She's bonded with Realmbreaker. She's done all this stuff. Now, if a tree survives everything she gets it into, she will essentially retire it back to the force she found it in. Can you imagine you are just chilling as a tree, a tree folk, and a planeswalker is just like, so I'm going to use you as a car, and then she'll just drop you back off after years of using you, after all this adventure. You've seen all these different worlds, and now you're just back to where you started. It would blow your mind. You can play all the baubles, the spell bombs, all those cards in order to sacrifice them and bring them back. Conjure's Bauble, for example, is a 1 mana artifact. You tap it, sack it, put up to 1 target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library, then draw a card. Now, the fact that it's 1 CMC sacrifices itself with no cost and draws a card. That is probably one of the best ones you can get out. And then because you're going to recast it, bring it back, recast it. And then you got Haywire Might kind of effects where you have to pay a cost. So you pay a green, you sacrifice it, exile target non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment. It's a 1/1. That'll be pretty powerful if we can repeat it constantly. If our opponents are playing an enchantment deck or an artifact deck, they'll essentially be screwed if we get this out. Cost reduction spells are going to be pretty good for this deck. Not all your spells are going to be like Lotus Petal that cost 0. Most of them, like the Bauble that I mentioned, it'll cost 1. So if you have something like Cloud Key, which is a 3 mana artifact at ETBs, you name artifact, creature, enchantment, instant, or sorcery. You're obviously going to do artifact. Spells of the that you cast of the chosen type cost 1 less. And then you're going to have stuff like Gaia's Touch. Now, this card's really good in a mono green deck, regardless of what you're doing. I never really see it. It's from the dark. It's a really good one. It's a 2 mana green enchantment. You can play an additional forest on each of your turns. It has to be a basic forest, though. And then you can sacrifice Gaia's Touch to add 2 green to your mana pool. This ability can be played as instant, blah, blah, blah. So basically, you play Gaia's Touch. You sacrifice it for 2 mana. You discard a land card from your hand with 6's ability. Then you can recast Gaia's Touch using the 2 mana you sacrificed it for. So it produces 2 and costs 2. So assuming you have, like, let's say 10 lands in your hand, you can recast this 10 times. And then there's a lot of stuff that'll benefit from that. Here are a bunch of ways to win by casting your artifacts from your graveyard a bunch of times. Sir Ginger gets +1/+1 counters each time you sack an artifact, so she's going to get huge. Then you can sack her for life. Ugin lets you exile a non-land permanent each time you cast a colorless spell. With enough mana reducers, Walking Ballista can do a bunch of damage if you keep recasting it. Turn Timber Sower and Chalk Outline net you a bunch of tokens. Ethaflux Reservoir is like a compounding life gain. First you gain 1 life, then you gain 3, then you gain, and it keeps going. And then you can pay 50 life to do 50 damage to any target. Quark Clan Ironwork gets you a crap ton of mana, and then Altar of the Brood mills each opponent out. So you have so many win cons in this deck, it's a very versatile strategy. One way to constantly get lands into your hand as you're drawing them, let's say you're sacrificing that bauble to draw a card. Abundance is a good way to do that. It's a 4 mana green enchantment. If you would draw a card, you may instead choose land or non land and reveal cards from the top of your library until reveal a card of the chosen type. Put that card into your hand and put all other cards revealed this way on the bottom of your library in any order. So you sacrifice your bauble, you draw a card, you say land, you reveal land, then you discard that land to cast your bauble again, sacrificing it. You get so many triggers. And since you're casting things, retrace is a cast ability. Sprouting Vines and other storm-like effects can be pretty good. Sprouting Vines is probably just the best. It's a 3 mana green instant. Search your library for a basic land card, reveal that card, and put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library, and then it has Storm. So this is really good because it refills your hand. Every time you discard a land to recast something, this essentially kind of replaces it at the end as long as you have the mana for it. Then you can do stuff like Creeping Renaissance. It is a card that returns any card of a chosen permanent type from your graveyard to your hand. So you choose land, and it also has flashback. You also got your Splendid Reclamation effects that bring all lands from your graveyard to your field. And then there's various ways to bounce them back to your hand. So this deck was actually given to me and the idea of it by LOL What 729. The goal of the deck is to force your opponents to draw their whole deck, essentially milling them, making them lose for having 0 cards in their library. You do this by having them fight Grothama, our commander, while also boosting their creatures. That's right, we try to make our opponent's creatures big, boost them, and make them the stompy deck, not us. The opposite of what green typically wants. Now, Grothama All Devouring is a 5 mana green legendary creature worm. Other creatures have, when this creature attacks, you may have it fight Grothama All Devouring. When Grothama leaves the battlefield, each player draws cards equal to the amount of damage dealt to it this turn by sources they control, and it's a 10/8. Grothama is a legendary worm, known to consume anything on the plane of Kylam. That's the plane that the Battle Bond set took place in. He is featured in the Valor Reach games. Now, Valor's Reach is essentially a giant coliseum. You actually see it in the Art of Doubling season from that set. It's essentially like a Roman coliseum where people engage in games. That's actually where we first saw Will and Rowan, Kindreth. They were planeswalkers with partner. I think it's actually the first time they did the partner with ability. Anyway, okay. So he consumes, or he tries to consume, all the contestants. On his underside there, you can see a red glowing symbol of unknown origin. Perhaps this is how the game masters kind of control him so he doesn't eat the spectators. We want to make our opponents huge. We want their creatures, if they have 1/1s, we want to make them 10/10s in a matter of moments. We can do that with exponential growth. It's an XX 2 green sorcery. Until end of turn, double target creature's power X times. So it's a 1/1, it goes to a 2/2, a 4/4, an 8/8, a 16/16, depending on how much mana you're going to have. Tifa's Limit Break is another crazy one they just released. It's a 1 mana green instant. It has tiered, so you choose to pay additional cost depending on what you want. It's a 0, target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Then you can pay 2 more, double target creature's power and toughness until end of turn. And then you can pay 7 more, triple target creature's power and toughness until end of turn. So what's that? 7, 8, 9, 10. If you pay 10 mana, you give a 1/1 +2/+2, double it to a 6/6, and then triplet to an 18/18. So you go from a 1/1 to an 18/18 for 10 mana. That's pretty good. Once our opponent's creatures are huge, we're going to have them fight our worm. Prey Upon is a 1 mana spell that has something we control fight something we don't control. But Uvenwald Tracker's probably the best fight spell in all of EDH. It's a 1 mana creature, human shaman. You pay 2, tap it, target creature you control fights another target creature, and it's a 1/1. Now, this is a repeatable fight ability. Also, it says a target you control fights another target creature, not a target you don't control. So sometimes that could be relevant. But you can easily make your opponents fight your commander. And if they have 30, 40, 50 power, bang, bada, boom, you're going to make them draw out. What if our opponents have 0 creatures? Or what if they have like something like an Eldrazi, so they keep reshuffling their graveyard into their deck and we can't make them mill out? Well, we have a backup plan. Plan B, it's Stormseeker, Iron Maiden style effects. Dealing damage to our opponent equals the number of cards in hand. So Stormseeker is a 4 mana green instant. It deals damage equal to the number of cards in target player's hand to that player. And then Iron Maiden is an 3 mana artifact, so it's a repeatable one. It says during each of your opponent's upkeeps, Iron Maiden deals 1 damage to that player for each card more than 4 cards in his or her hand. An alternative win con for this deck is Multani, Marrow Sorcerer. He essentially has power and toughness equal to the total number of cards in all players' hands, and he has Shroud. So basically, if your opponents are drawing a bunch of cards, he's going to be huge. And if you can give him Trample, there's many ways to do that, of course. You can essentially one shot. And to avoid decking yourself out, because I feel like that could be a possibility, you can do something like Blessed Respite, which is a 2 mana green instant. Target player shuffles their graveyard into their library. Prevent all combat damage to be dealt this turn. And of course, there's other ways to do that, like the original. Commander Legal Eldrazi's, they'll shuffle your whole library in. And then you have your individual ones like Blight, Steel, and Vigor that shuffle themselves in. So that's essentially the deck. This next deck is a deck I own in paper. It's a secret commander deck based around the enchantment Lost in the Woods, which is a 5 mana green enchantment. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a forest card, remove that creature card from combat. Then you put the revealed cards on the bottom of your library. So the whole goal of this deck is to manipulate the top card of our library so our opponents get lost in the woods, and we're going to have about 50 forests, and we it's a really fun deck. It's definitely a very unique deck. I've played it a couple of times. It can make it so your opponents just don't want to waste their attack, because since you have 50 forests, essentially your opponent has a 50% shot of just fizzling their attacks, so they won't waste their, they're not going to want to attack you. And that's going to be changed. The odds will be in our favor because we're going to be manipulating the top of our library a lot. And then it wins with our commanders. Glanra and Kamal are the partner commanders. I chose them because it's a mana dork and a win con in the command zone. And since our deck is 51% land, we're going to need all the extra help we can get. Now, Glanra is a 3 mana green legendary creature elf druid. It taps to add a green, and whenever you spend this mana to cast a spell with converted mana cost 6 or greater, you draw a card, and it's a 1/2. Kamal, Heart of Karosa, is a 8 mana green legendary creature human druid. At the beginning of combat on your turn, creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. Then you can pay 2 until end of turn. Target land you control becomes a 1/1 elemental creature with vigilance, indestructible, and haste. It's still land. It's a 5/5. So we're going to be tapping Galandra for mana, and then Kamal late game, once we have a bunch of lands on the field, will end the game quickly. When the Phyrexian invasion devastated much of Dominaria, many elves lost their homes and families. Galandra kind of took it upon himself to travel the world, inviting everyone back to his home. And when they got to his home, he made it his personal mission to welcome each and every one of them to the forest. It was said that once he welcomes you, the forest felt like your natural home. I'm sure I don't need to go over Sensei's Divining Top and Sylvan Library. They're mainstays in the EDH community. They essentially manipulate the top card of your library and let you draw. Now, Miri's Guile is not as common. It's a 1 mana green enchantment. During your upkeep, you look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back in any order. So it's your turn. You look at the top 3 and you're like, oh, okay. I have 2 lands and a non-land. I'm gonna put the non-land on top. I'll draw it for my turn, and now you have 2 lands on top. That way, if your opponent attacks you, it'll fog 2 of their attacks. Keep in mind, we are going to be playing a lot of cards that let us play additional lands and play lands from the top of our library. So, depending on what you get, is what you do. Lost in the Woods is essentially a pillow fort style thing. It's protecting you from attacks. We have a few other things that do that. Sandworm Convergence, which is an 8 mana enchantment. Creatures with flying can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. At the beginning of your end step, you create a 5/5 green worm creature token. And a few ways we're going to end the game other than, Kamal, and we're going to animate a lot of our lands. There's various ways to do that. We also have a lot of cards that say put a token into play for each force you control. But one other way to really close out the game fast is Primal Order. It's a 4 mana green enchantment. During each player's upkeep, Primal Order deals 1 damage to that player for each non basic land he or she controls. I think we have one non-basic land, Glacial Chasms. The rest are just forests. Our opponents hopefully will have a bunch because people get pretty greedy with their mana base. So this is like a price of progress repetitively each upkeep. One fun combo in this deck, and it's just good synergy, is Cultivator Colossus, and it combos with Abundance. Now, since we're going to have a lot of lands in our deck, of course, we can play Cultivator Colossus and great value. But with Abundance out, we can play literally every land in our deck. So Cultivator Colossus is a 7 mana green creature. It's a plant beast. As trample, its power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. And then when it enters the battlefield, you may put a lane card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. And if you do, you draw a card and repeat this process. And to note, he is a game ender because he has trample. And if you play him and you play this right with abundance, which we talked about earlier, you can essentially make him a 50/50. So essentially, Cultivator Colossus ETBs. You put a land card from your hand into play, then you draw the card with abundance out. You say, hey, land. So you draw till you get a land. You put it in your hand, you put it in play, you repeat the process. You draw the card, you say land, and so on and so forth. You play every single land. It does require you to have at least one land and abundance out on the field with when you play Cultivator Colossus. So keep that in mind. Our next deck is on the ability called Grandeur. It is a hard strategy to play with in EDH and requires a lot of unique deck building strategies, and playing it will also be for the more experienced players, more experienced planeswalkers, I should say. Baru, Fist of Crosa, is the commander for this one. It's a 5 mana green legendary creature human druid. Whenever a forest comes into play, green creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn, and then it has Grandeur. Discard another card named Baru, Fist of Crosa. Put an XX green worm creature token into play, where X is the number of lands you control. It's a 4/4. So you probably already see the difficulty with this. We have to have 2 creatures named Baru, Fist of Crosa, which is really hard in EDH. What we're going to be doing is making token copies of this and bringing this guy back to our hand to get a lot of worms. We have a lot of synergy and combos, so hopefully we can do it all in one turn. Baru is a druid from Crosa. He's actually related to Kamal, who was also called the Fist of Crosa. Now, Dominaria has faced apocalypse after apocalypse, devastating the forest. Baru attempted to restore the forest, and it actually worked. Wildlife started to return to it, which also brought predators like worms. They hunt by digging underground and kind of ambushing their prey. Now, he was able to tame some of them and use them as companions. There are a few ways that we can do to get our commander copied. Some of them don't even involve our commander having to be on the field. Nexus of Becoming is a 6 mana artifact at the beginning of combat on your turn. Draw a card. Then you may exile an artifact or creature card from your hand. If you do, create a token that's a copy of the exile card, except it's a 3/3 golem artifact creature in addition to its other types. So if you happen to have them in your hand and you need a token, you exile them with Nexus of Becoming and get a copy, and you just put that in your command zone. Bramble Sovereign is another way to make tokens based on ETB. It's a 4 mana green dryad. Whenever another non token creature enters the battlefield, you may pay 2. And if you do, that creature's controller creates a token that's a copy of that creature, and it's a 4/4. So we play our commander, make a token. If the legend rule still applies, send our original commander to the command zone or our graveyard. Now, it depends what you have on the field where you want to send them. You might have a Timeless Witness in your hand that ETBs to return target card from your graveyard to your hand. It also has Eternalize for 7. So it just depends what you have in your hand, what you're going to play. And that's kind of why I like this deck, because it's very situational on what strategy you're going to take. Now, of course, our commander is going to start getting expensive if we're constantly exiling it or something like that. If we do end up discarding it for its ability, we can just put it straight back into the command zone. We don't even have to put it in the graveyard. And once it's in our command zone, we can do something like Road of Return. It's a 2 mana green sorcery. Choose one. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. And then you can also do this. Put your commander into your hand from your command zone and then entwine for 2. So, of course, we are going to be discarding, we're going to be exiling, we're going to be doing all this stuff, sacrificing, get it back into our command zone, bring it back with Roto Return or with Command Beacon. Now, this one's the most important one. It's a land, Taster Colors, but you can tap it, sacrifice it, put your commander into your hand from your command zone. Now, this is amazing because we're going to recur this a lot. We're going to be cheating the commander cost a lot in this deck. Don't forget to chuck all the cards that say you can play lands from your graveyard, like Crucible of Worlds. So you can throw this combo in the deck as well. I actually saw this by a person named Darth Meatloaf, interesting name, on Reddit. So you need a couple things in play. You need 5 lands, Tamir Sabertooth or Obelisk of Undoing, Dual Nature, Paleoth, and then a Haste Enablement Concordant Crossroads. So you cast your commander. When he resolves, the ETB trigger from Dual Nature goes on the stack. Essentially, it says you create a token copy when a creature ETBs. And then you use the Sabertooth in response to the trigger being on the stack, the Dual Nature trigger, to return your commander to your hand. So the legend rule doesn't destroy one. And then you discard your commander once it's on in hand, of course. And that will make a 5/5 Wurm since you have 5 lands. Then the Wurm token triggers Paleoth, putting Baru back into your hand. Then you repeat until you have enough Wurm tokens to essentially kill everyone. And remember, give them all haste. This next deck is a mono green Aristocrats deck with the Lizard Connor's Curse at the helm. It was probably the only deck I really wanted to build from the Spider Man set. Now, let me read the card and I'll explain the strategy. It's a 4 mana green legendary creature, Lizard Villain, has trample. And when Lizard Connor's Curse ETBs, up to one target creature loses all abilities and becomes a green lizard creature with base power and toughness 4/4, and he's a 5/5. So that is a really interesting ability. You're essentially transmutating one of your opponent's creatures, shutting it off for good. Unless it's their commander, then they have to block, sacrifice, and then blah, blah, blah. So it's a huge hassle for them. But how are we going to be using aristocrats and this ability together? Well, we're going to be playing the lizard, sacrificing him, and then bringing him back through various ways. Now, it's almost like a reanimation green deck as well. But we're going to be sacrificing a lot. And mono green, I don't know if you go to EDH Rec, look up aristocrats in mono green. There aren't many out there. It's usually black and white. Of course, there's sometimes Abzan thrown in there, but green is definitely not typically an aristocrat deck. Now, the lizard was named Dr. Connors, who had a missing arm. Using his genius, he eventually developed a serum to heal himself using lizard DNA. But he, of course, turned himself into a lizard, as one does. Not a huge loss, though, because he had an arm that grew back. He had superpowered strength, superpowered speed, a tail. But one problem, he just kind of went insane. That seems to be a going trend with Spider Man villains. They were cool people with good intentions, and then bang, bada, boom, they're insane now. That brings a little conflict when he's beating the crap out of them. He can't just beat the crap out of someone evil. There has to be some kind of moral confliction. That's how Spider-Man rolls. He's not like Batman, I'll tell you that much, okay? Now, it's often depicted that the lizard is faster and stronger than Spider-Man. So he is actually pretty strong. They kind of sometimes he seems almost like the Aquaman of Spider-Man villains. People kind of make fun of him, but he's actually a powerhouse. Now, unless you really want to recast the lizard 50,000 times, bringing him back when he dies will be really great. Resurrection Orb, Nim Death Mantle, and Lifeline all do this. Now, Resurrection Orb is an equipment 2 mana. It says equipped creature has lifelink, and when it dies, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next in-step equip 4. And then Nim Death Mantle is also 2 mana. It's an equipment. It says equipped creature is +2/+2 and has Intimidate and is black zombie. And then whenever a non-token creature is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay 4. And then if you do, return that card to the battlefield and attach Nim Death Mantle to it, and it's equipped 4. So we get some zombie lizard action. Finally we get some Marvel zombies, and then you got Lifeline. Now this one's a universal one, so it helps your opponents. It's a 5 mana artifact. It says whenever a creature is put into a graveyard and a creature is in play, return that creature from your graveyard to play at the end of turn. Now, these all will do it. We have other ways you can do it, of course. You got your Eternal Witness effects, your Timeless Witness effects, plenty of cards, Balaged's Recovery. But I really like these guys because you never really see artifacts in equipment based strategies in green that often. So it's even more unique. Now, in terms of death triggers, we got stuff like Spinner of Souls and Foster. Now, Spinner of Souls is a 3 mana green spider spirit, has reach. Whenever another non token creature you control dies, you may reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. And it's a 4/3. So every time we sacrifice a lizard or something, we get a replacement into our hand. That's pretty good. Foster does a similar thing. Now, when's the last time you saw Foster in a game? It came out, I believe, in 2013 Commander, but I've never seen it played once. It is a 4 mana green enchantment. Whenever a creature you control dies, you may pay 1. And if you do, reveal cards from the top of your library to reveal a creature card, put that into your hand, and the rest into your graveyard. So it doesn't put them on the bottom of the library like Spinner of Souls, but sometimes you might want them in your graveyard. You might want that Timeless Witness in your graveyard or something like that. So it's not too bad. I love both of these. If you have both these out, every time you sacrifice a lizard, bring it back with Nim Death Mantle, you get 2 creatures from your library. That's pretty good. Wooey, does green have sacrifice outlets out the wazoo? You've heard of birthing pod effects, of course. There's also an enchantment that is something similar. It's birthing ritual. It's a 2 mana green enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature, look at the top 7 cards of your library. Then you may sacrifice a creature, and if you do, you may put a creature card with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield, where X is 1 plus the sacrifice creature's mana value. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. And then Perilous Forays. This is actually a really good one. It's a 5 mana green enchantment. You pay 1, sacrifice a creature. You search the library for a land card with a basic land type, put onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle. Obviously, we're going to be doing Forest. You can put this in a multicolored Aristocrats deck with green, and you can get your shock lands, your triumphs. You can get a whole bunch. So it's not a bad card at all. There is a lot of good sacrifice outlets in green. This next deck is a token based deck that uses replacement effects and the weird strategies that go along with it. Peregrine Took is the commander. It's a 3 mana green legendary creature, halfling citizen. If one or more tokens will be created under your control, Those tokens plus an additional food token are created instead. Then you can sacrifice 3 foods, draw a card, and it's a 2/3. And the card interaction I want to go over involves Slime Against Humanity, which is a 3 mana green sorcery. You create a 0/0 green ooze creature token with Trample. Put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is 2 plus the total number of cards you own in exile and in your graveyard that are oozes or are named Slime Against Humanity. A deck can have any number of cards named Slime Against Humanity. So that's pretty cool. You can I think I picked around 25 of these for the deck. That way you have a plenty of options. 1 out of 4 of your cards will be Slime Against Humanity. So, a quick rules lawyer here. Now, when a replacement effect occurs, like when a token is made in addition to another token being made, it only replaces the creation of the token with that additional. It doesn't replace the whole ability. So, when you use something like Slam Against Humanity that adds counters and makes tokens, the food tokens will also get the +1/+1 counters on them, which is a useless addition to most people, but we are cool deck builders, so we're going to actually be using that as the theme for this deck. We're going to be animating our food and swinging at our opponents. But don't you worry, our commander is not the only replacement effect that we can bring to the table here. Stridehanger Automaton is a 3 mana artifact creature construct. Thopters you control get +1/+1. If one or more artifact tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus an additional 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact token are created instead into 1/4. So essentially, when we make a food, which is an artifact for some reason, you know what? Lore wise, it makes no sense that food are also artifacts. If anything, maybe enchantments. But anyway, I digress. We make a 1/1 Thopter in addition, and we could also get counters placed on that as well. Quina, Q Gourmet, is a 3 mana green legendary creature if one or more tokens would be created under your control. Those tokens plus a 1/1 green frog creature token is created instead, and you pay to sacrifice a frog. Put a +1/+1 counter on Quina. It's a 2/3. Now, you could also make this guy your commander, but I really like the idea of animating our food and attacking our opponents with it, but it's up to you. Then you could do something like Academy Manufacture, which is also a replacement effect. And by the way, you will be a target. This thing will be a target if you play it. No one's gonna want to keep this out. But when you play a food, or you create a food, I should say, you get a clue, food, and treasure token instead. It's a 1/3. So if you had all 3 of these out plus your commander and you make a token with Slime Against Humanity, you get an ooze with counters on it. You get a food with counters, a clue with counters, a treasure with counters, a 1/1 Thopter with flying, and a 1/1 frog with counters. So they all get counters. It's a pretty interesting combination. And if you think blue is the only one that can animate artifacts, you are wrong. Green does it pretty well. Displaced Dinosaur is a 7 drop that makes all of our foods enter as 7/7 dinosaur chicken nuggies. And then, in addition to the other types. And then, Hausen Emerald Archdruid, you can pay 1 to until end of turn, make a token into a green bear creature with base power and toughness 4/4, in addition to its other types. And then Titania's Song normally would not be great for us because it makes all non creature artifacts lose all abilities and become creatures equal to their power and toughness equal to their CMC, which would be 0 for foods. But don't forget, we're going to have +1/+1 counters on them. So this will shut down our opponent's artifacts and actually help us. And since we're playing 25 Slime Against Humanity cards, we can do something like Spellweaver Helix is a 3 mana artifact. It imprints. When it comes into play, you may remove 2 target sorcery cards in a single graveyard from the game. And whenever a card is played, if it has the same name as one of the imprinted sorcery cards, you may copy the other and play the copy without paying its mana cost. So if we have 2 Slime Against Humanities in our graveyard, we exile them, play a Slime Against Humanity, get to play another Slime Against Humanity. And remember, they do count exiled Slime Against Humanities as counters. So don't you worry. Even if you're getting rid of them from your graveyard, you still get the benefit. And then obviously, Thrumming Stone in any same name deck is amazing. It gives them Ripple 4. So you play it, you look at the top four, you can play another one. Your odds of doing that, you might get 2, 3 maybe with this, but that still will be enough to essentially swarm your opponents with slime. And one thing I wanted to throw in here are things that make tokens each upkeep, not just during your own. Tendershoot Dryad makes 1/1s. Verdant Force makes 1/1s. And then there's like a Verdant Umbra that does it, or Embrace or something like that that does it. There's an elf that does it. So there's options. That way you're constantly making tokens and getting more. So you make a 1/1 sapling, but if you have your commander out, you also make a food. And if you have any of the others out, you might make a frog, you might make a treasure and clue, you might make all this. So it just kind of piles on. And that's what I like about this deck. It seems to be like a cascading effect of tokens. And since we're in green, we can tutor out whatever we really need. And the Slime Against Humanity is just icing on the cake for me because it does the same name things, and I always love that. Now, this next deck is a Death Touch Poison Strategy deck. Of course, Infect does exist. However, before Infect was poisonous. For example, Virulent Sliver has Poisonous 1 and gives all Slivers Poisonous 1. Venom Sliver also has Death Touch and gives Slivers Death Touch. So this is essentially a mono green Sliver deck. And we're essentially using those two things to poison out our opponents. Not counting changelings or things that ETB and you choose a creature type and blah, 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 there are 21 slivers in mono green. What I really like about slivers is they're always lords for other slivers typically, and that makes them very powerful. But people are scared of slivers. If you slap down a Sliver Legion, Sliver Queen, Sliver Overlord, what have you, people are going to instantly know your strategy. You sit down with this deck, they're not going to know you have slivers, not until you play a sliver. Then they're going to be like, does this guy just run one sliver? And then they're going to find out you run a bunch of slivers. I really like this strategy. It's sneaky and it's not as scary as other sliver decks. Finn the Fangbearer would be a good commander for this. It's a 2-mana green legendary creature human warrior. Has Death Touch. When a creature you control with Death Touch deals combat damage to a player, that player gets 2 poison counters and it's 1/3. So essentially, we want to get those 2 first slivers out that I talked about, Virulent Sliver and Venom Sliver, and then swing in with slivers. That way, each sliver will give 3 poison counters every time it hits because Poisonous 1 and Death Touch. And there's other ways to give Death Touch outside of Venom Sliver. You got Orin Frostfang, you got Nyla's Bow. All of them do it. I like Frostfang because it's also a draw engine. People typically don't want to block a 1/1 Death Touch with their 4/4 utility creature. And if you want to get a little spicy with it, you can also make this a fight deck. Since you're going to have so much death touch, fight effects, nowadays they have more punch effects, which are effects that has target creature deal damage to the other target creature. So it's not a back and forth, it's just a one punch kind of thing. Infectious Bite does this. Also, it gives them a poison counter, each opponent in a poison counter. And then you could do Virulent Rot Priest if you wanted to. It gives target opponent a poison counter when it's targeted. So if you're doing a lot of fight, you can put that in. There's different ways you can go. If you want to just go the standard sliver route, I would totally understand. I really like that. I like monocolor slivers. I was playing around with each color for a monocolor sliver deck, but I think green is the best. This next deck is essentially a mono green burn deck, specifically a green fireball deck. We want to just do one big fireball. Little did you know, Nissa didn't need Chandra to destroy the Eldrazi with a big fireball. All she needed was some confidence in herself and some of these cards. Okay, I actually got this idea from Dead Star on Reddit. The commander is Omnath, Locus of Mana. It's a 3-mana green legendary creature elemental. You don't lose unspent green mana as steps and phases end. And then it gets +1/+1 for each unspent green mana you have, and it starts as a 1/1. And there are two main X spells we want to get. Hurricane, which is an X and a green sorcery. It deals X damage to each creature with flying in each player. And then Squall Line, it's an X and 2 green instant. It deals X damage to each creature with flying in each player. So we want to get as much mana in our mana pool. We're going to do mana doublers. We're going to do all that. And then hit them with a Hurricane, hit them with a Squall Line, which will hit each player. You can also do Squall Monger. It's a 4 mana green creature. You pay 2. It deals 1 damage to each creature with flying in each player. Any player may activate this ability, and it's a 3/3. So since these are all doing damage to each player, we want to protect ourselves with Glacial Chasm, which has a cumulative upkeep of pay 2 life. And when it enters the battlefield, you sacrifice a land. Creatures you control can't attack, and then prevent all damage that will be dealt to you. That's not combat damage, that's all damage. So it prevents the Hurricane, Squall Line, and Squallmonger's damage to us. And there's going to be plenty of ways to do this out in green. And don't forget to put your mana doublers in there. Mana Reflection is probably the best one. 6 mana green enchantment. If you tap a permanent for mana, it produces twice as much mana instead. So it's a replacement effect, which is pretty interesting. Then you can, of course, throw Cultivator Colossus. You're probably going to have a fair amount of lands in this deck. I think the guy who told me about this, he played 50 lands. You don't have to go that high, of course, but still, you're going to have plenty of lands. And that's essentially the deck. Do burn damage as quickly as possible, mana ramp like the Dickens, and bang bada boom, you're going to win the game. This next deck is definitely one of the meaner decks. So play this in a higher, competitive group, a more spiky group. It is an extra turn green deck, which you don't really see ever. You see it in blue and red, of course, but never green. Now, Yiva, Nature's Herald, is our commander. It's a 4 mana green legendary creature, Elf Shaman. Has flash. You may cast green creature spells as though they had flash, and it's a 4/4. So, the strategy of this deck is to constantly untap all of our stuff every turn and then cast things for free. Most of our stuff that we're going to cast are creatures. So, we get to essentially play 4 turns per round. Like I said, it's going to be pretty annoying for your opponent, but extra turn decks are kind of like that anyway, so you're probably going to be playing this in a more competitive format anyway. There's a bunch of ways actually in mono green to untap all your lands and all your permanents. Patron of the Orochi, which could actually be your commander if you wanted to do it that way, is a 8 mana green legendary creature. Spirit has Snake Offering, and you tap it, untap all forest and green creatures. Play this ability only once each turn. It's a 7/7, so it actually untaps itself as well. And then, of course, you got Seedborn Muse, you got Awakening. There's other things. What's that? There's an enchantment that also does it. I forget the name of it, but there's a bunch of ways to do it. And you remember, as every turn you're casting stuff like crazy, you're taking 4 turns per round. Then you got your legitimate take an extra turn cards. Magistrate Scepter is one way you can go about it. It's a 3 mana artifact. You pay for it, tap it, put a charge counter on it. Then you tap it, remove 3 charge counters from it, take an extra turn after this one. And then you got core tapper effects that put charge counters on things. You can also play cards that untap it. It naturally goes with our original strategy of Seedborn Muse because it untaps every round. So every round you get an extra turn. You will really you will really become the target if you're doing this. And if you want to get really nasty, which I know you do, you complete the Prototype Portal and Ugin Nexus combo. So Prototype Portal essentially has an imprint ability. You exile an artifact from your hand when it ETBs. Then you can pay X, tap it, create a token of it. And you're going to create Ugin's Nexus, which is a 5 mana legendary artifact. If a player would begin an extra turn, that player skips it. But if Ugin's Nexus would be put into a graveyard from the battlefield, instead exile and take an extra turn after this one. So you have a way to sacrifice it, take an extra turn, and then do it again every single round. Also works well with the Seedborn Muse combo situation because you tap it to activate it. You can also do the Mindslaver effect if you want to get really, really nasty to control your opponent's turn every single turn. So this next deck is going to be a budget deck and a tribal deck based around green dragons. Now, I don't know why, but green and blue dragons just appeal to me more than the red dragons. I'm not sure why. I think dragons have more power than just fire, I guess. Who knows? So Scanos, Dragonheart, and Hardy Outlander, which only has 19 decks on EDH Rec, are the commanders. You could also make this a popper commander deck if you wanted to go that route. So basically, I actually got this idea from JF Alex on Reddit. The goal of this deck is to increase the power of one dragon so much that you just can one shot somebody. Scanos Dragonheart is a 5 mana green legendary creature dragon ranger. Whenever it attacks, it gets plus X until end of turn, where X is the greatest power among other dragons you control and dragon cards in your graveyard, and it has to choose a background. It starts at a 4/4. Then Hardy Outlander is a 2 mana green legendary enchantment background. Commander creatures you own have, when this creature attacks a player, if no other opponent has more life than that player, another target creature gets plus X until end of turn, where X is this creature's power. So just having both of these guys on the field is going to boost two creatures pretty powerfully. Now, our commander doesn't really have any lore, unfortunately. However, he is a dragonborn from the D&D set, and there are essentially a race of humanoid dragons that live in a militaristic nation. But despite their appearance, they don't have any actual ancestral ties to true dragons. But different lineages of dragonborn have different characteristics, including their dragon breath. It differs between the heritage and what it can do. Some is fire, some is acid, for example. Their personality, size, strength, and deposition differ between families, ranging from soldiers to bards. Scanos Dragonheart, our commander, is a ranger by his nature, hence his tie to green mana. Funny enough, dragons actually have a lot of utility in this deck. Of course, they're all flying and they're pretty strong, usually 4/4 and up. However, you got like Emerald Dragon that has an adventure side that counters target activated or triggered ability from a non-creature source. Bloombind Regent has a adventure side as well, which searches for two basic forest cards, reveal them, put one on the battlefield tapped, and then one into your hand. So it almost cultivates. So you got a lot of good utility, and then your dragons, obviously, once you're done with the utility, you can cast them for their other side and then have a flying monster. And then flying is going to be really great because we might boost these guys a couple of times. They might become 12/12s or 20/20s. So that flying and trample that some of them have is going to be crucial. Our two commanders boost, but yeah, you can have other things like Canopy Gargantuan, which I saw this card and I was like, dang, this guy is pretty powerful. It's a 7 mana green dragon, flying ward 2. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a number of +1/+1 counters on each other creature you control equal to that creature's toughness, and it's a 7/7. So if you have a 4/4, it's now an 8/8. That's so our commander just gets bigger and bigger. And then Wild Beastmaster is another example of a card that can boost all your creatures. It's a 3 mana green human shaman. Whenever it attacks, each other creature you control gets plus X until end of turn, where X is its power, and it's a 1/1. So you boost Wild Beastmaster, then swing with it, then it boosts everything else. We're going to play all the mana ramp that cares about power level. For example, Bighorn Rancher is a 5 mana green human ranger, has vigilance. It taps to add green equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. Then you can sacrifice Bighorn Rancher. You gain life equal to the greatest toughness among other creatures you control, and it's a 2/5. And then you got Transforce that Outlands. Now, this used to be pretty expensive. It's not as expensive anymore, but it's a 5 mana green sorcery. You search your library for X basic land cards, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Put those onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. When I was playtesting this deck, I ended up getting 13 Forest into play for 5 mana, so that's pretty good. Our removal also is going to be power based. Monstrous Onslaught is a 5 mana green sorcery. It deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control as you cast this spell. So if we have a 10/10/20/20, we're doing 10 to 20 damage spread out as we wish. And then, of course, our draw is going to be power based. Lifestream's Blessing is a new one that I really like. It's a 6 mana green instant. Draw X cards, where X is the greatest power among creatures you controlled as you cast this spell. If this spell was cast from exile, you gain twice X life. So if we have a 10/10 and we cast this from exile, we draw 10, gain 20 life. You can't beat that. I think the budget, at least on Moxfield for this deck, is around 145. But you can also get rid of the most expensive 4 cards in the deck to make it under $100, which to me, that's pretty budget. You could also throw, if you don't want to go the budget route, you can throw in stuff like Ancient Bronze Dragon, that when it deals combat damage to a player, you roll a d20. Then when you do, you put X +1/+1 counters on 2 target creatures, where X is the result, and it's a 7/7. And then Old Gnawbone's probably the best green dragon in Magic. It's a 7 mana legendary creature. Dragon has flying. When a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many treasure tokens in 7/7. So our 10/10, 20/20 dragon that we hit with, now we get that much mana. I think this deck is pretty effective. If you go the budget route, it's still pretty powerful. It has the capability to one-shot opponents, which green does pretty well, but they don't do dragons that often, especially flying. Green is not the flying color if you'd have to pick a color to do it. So that really helps us. So we're doing what green does best and what its weakness is and combining the two. Thank you so much for watching till the end of this video. I really liked a lot of these decks. I was kind of, like I said, I was actually shocked of the uniqueness of the decks. I thought green was pretty stale. However, you can do a lot in it. Quick shout out to my patrons, my paid patrons. You got Brooke and Who's Neil. If you're interested in looking at my Patreon as a free membership where you can has a Discord link, you can join us. I'd love to talk to you. Also has paid tiers if that's something you're interested in. And until next one, guys, I'll be seeing you.